Old woman is someone who knows her strengths and isn't afraid to embrace it. So we invite you to join us as we introduce you to a community of South African businesswomen who inspire change through conversation and also wish to empower other women by sharing their stories. Thank you for tuning into our channel. Don't go away, we'll be back in just a bit. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Brigetti Limbanda. I'm a Global Goodwill Ambassador, a live stream host and producer, and I help brands, networks, and social good communities create great digital storytelling experiences. My guest today is Dr. Donna Podems. Donna was born in the USA and moved to South Africa in 1997. She's got two children, aged 13 and 10, and she holds a doctorate in interdisciplinary studies and a master's degree in public administration. Her most recent book is a mentoring book called Being an Evaluator, Your Guide to Evaluation. In 2004, she started a small business called Otherwise Research and Evaluation, where she is the current director. She also keeps one foot firmly planted in academia, she says. She is also an associate producer at the Michigan State University and a senior research associate at the University of Johannesburg. Donna says her work revolves around conducting research and evaluation on interventions aimed at shifting social inequality. She's a former national board member of the American Evaluation Association and a former national member of the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association. She's on the editorial board of the American Journal of Evaluation. So let's not waste any time and let's invite Donna onto the show. Donna, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you on the show today. So Donna, walk us through your entry into getting to where you are today.
Okay, well, it was an accident, so it's a bit of a funny story. I was living in the United States, and I was a returned Peace Corps volunteer. Peace Corps is a volunteer organization that sends you overseas, and you volunteer for 2, sometimes 3 years in different areas. And I was an agricultural volunteer working with vaccinating dogs and cats and cows and really essentially learning about poverty and living at that level myself. When I came back to the United States, because I spoke a colloquial Spanish, I was hired to go out and identify illegal farm workers who were in the United States, not for a bad reason, but to try and understand how the visa processes should be changed or not within the U.S. This was back in the mid 1990s. During that process, I happened to be doing my work, running around trying to find people to talk to me. And the company who hired me asked me to do an evaluation. I had never heard of program evaluation. I did not know what it was. I agreed to help them out and do it. And that was my introduction to working with social programs in order to either improve them or assess how well they're doing. When I say a social program, I'm talking about anything to do with, for example, early childhood education or women's empowerment or the stopping of trafficking of rhino horn. So any kind of program that's aiming to create social change. And that was my introduction to it. I was very excited about learning about this kind of work. I wasn't familiar with it before. And I applied for a position to go to the Dominican Republic, where I would use my Spanish and my skills. And about a week before I was supposed to leave, they canceled the program. And they said, but we've got this spot in South Africa working with gender and housing issues and program evaluation. I'd given up my flats. I didn't have a car. I had no job. So I said, sure, I'd be glad to go for 6 months. And that is how I ended up in South Africa. And it's 20 some odd years later, and I'm still here. And my career continued to build from that point. I got to, in the early 2000s, early noughties, I realized that although I had a master's degree, I really needed more education and more understanding of my field. And I went back and applied for and was accepted into a doctoral program. When I finished that doctoral program in 2004, one of the ways I wanted to stay in South Africa. I fell in love with this country. And one of the ways to stay in the country at the time, legally and ethically, was to set up a small business. And that was the creation of Otherwise Research and Evaluation, which I'm currently the director of, and is still running today in 2019. Along that journey, however, I also realized I wasn't a true business person. I didn't want to go after those big contracts and that big money. I was very excited about working with communities, working with nonprofits, foundations, the UN, the World Bank, and so on, to try and promote and be a part of social change. In doing that, I had to keep reading and keep understanding what was going on in the literature. And I, at that point, poked a toe into academia and began to work at Stellenbosch University as a lecturer. And I was there for 10 years. And more recently, I've joined the University of Johannesburg and a couple of years ago, Michigan State University. So I have, as you said in my introduction, I have one foot very firmly planted in doing practical work, being out in the field, working in Southern Eastern Africa, in parts of Asia, in Eastern Europe, real practical hands-on work with social change. And on the other hand, I keep writing, I keep publishing, I mentor master's and PhD students. So I'm sort of half academic and half business.
Donna, with so many hats and 2 children to boot, how do you manage your time, and how do you manage wearing these different hats?
First of all, I'm tired all the time. So
I love that. Thanks for being honest.
Yeah, my Twitter handle, I think I identify as an exhausted mom. I consider myself incredibly privileged because although I do wear 3 different hats, I work at 2 different universities and run a company, I can mostly negotiate my own time. So for example, my daughter this afternoon, she has a field hockey match. I have a report due. I can make sure I write that report and then go to the field hockey match and then come back and continue that report. I teach online, I work with master PhD students, and I give them times when I'm available, and I'm very flexible with them about that time. I think it would be extremely, much more difficult if I had a 9-to-5 job, where I had to go in and be there at 9 and I couldn't leave till 5. So I actually feel very privileged wearing these different hats and juggling my time. But I have to admit, a lot of work gets done between the kids going to bed around 8 o'clock at night and 2 in the morning. That's probably my most productive writing time.
That is amazing. So would you say that it's more difficult for a woman to do what you do than for a man? Is there a difference? Is there still a gender inequality in what you do?
I myself have never felt that gender inequality to a large degree. What I notice in my field is that, and again, this is just my experience, is that a woman having a doctorate is almost the equivalent to a man having a master's. So when I'm giving advice to young women in the field and they're asking about, rising up and getting higher level positions and so on, my advice to them is keep your foot firmly planted in the practical world. That means a lot, getting experience. But you really do need to, in my opinion, you really do need to get that master's and eventually that PhD.
So tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. My book, I'm very excited about it. It's a book that's been germinating in my head since my doctorate, so since the early 2000s. In a lot of what I do, as I mentioned, I teach at the university, but I do a lot of community work where I run a lot of workshops and I help people try to understand, or at least articulate, they do understand, articulate what their theory is about how the world changes. And because they believe, for example, that a woman is empowered if she, like I just said, has a higher level degree, how do you go about supporting that change? How do you help that happen? And along the way of how do you help that happen, you ask the question, how do you know it happened? And who valued that happening? And who was prevented from taking part in that process? You start to ask these kind of social change questions, and they're around, of course, assessment and measurement. So this book began to germinate a long time ago of how do you actually go about doing that kind of work. This is the first and the only mentoring book on the market. It's put out by Guilford Press, and it's called Being an Evaluator, that actually mentors you through not only how to do what I do, so it's a technical book, but it also has a lot of personal stories and a very real approach to being very honest about the challenges that a man or a woman will encounter in doing this kind of social change work.
And did you, is the book available online?
Yes, it is both a hardcover and an ebook. The book is available in all over the world. Although the publisher is Guilford in the US, they have distributors and partners in Africa and Europe and Asia, both as a hardcover, again, and as an ebook.
Fantastic. So my next question to you is, are you available as a mentor, or do you see yourself as a mentor to younger women at all?
I do, absolutely. And I think it's one of the parts of my moving ahead and in my career that I think is important. I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't been mentored by both men and women. I've had the most incredible mentors in my life, Michael Patton being my strongest mentor, but Jennifer Green and just so many people who have stepped into my life and helped me and mentored me. Patricia Rogers, just so many people that I feel privileged and honored to give that back. I enjoy being a mentor. And I think wearing that mentor hat has come in many different forms for me. I feel as though, of course, I'm mentoring my master's and my PhD students, shepherding them through getting their degree, so that academic kind of mentoring. But I also mentor younger women in my field in a very practical sense. Very much enjoy that part of my work.
You really took the next question out of my mouth, because I was going to ask you, who are your mentors and who are the people that you look up to?
I always mention these people first. They're very well-known names in my field. But I have to say there's so many other people. When I work with nonprofits, the director of the nonprofit for, say, an early childhood development program, she's touching my life as I'm touching hers. And I feel that I get mentored from all different kinds of places and spaces, even from people that don't have big names in the field, so to speak. Yeah.
And it's amazing how inspiration comes from, different people, different spheres, depending on where you are in your stream of life. And so I want to ask you one question as a mom who's worked from home myself. How do you find your relationship with your children? Do you think it's different? Is it better because you manage your time directly?
Yes, I do. I don't have anything to compare it to because I've actually never had a real job, a 9-to-5 job. I've always, coming out of my PhD program, started this company. My daughter was born 2 years later. So I've always managed to move myself around so I can be with my children. So I think it is strong in that way. I think the challenges come, if I'm not jumping the question there, I think the challenges come with one, drawing that boundary between this is my office. You can see this is a door here with a clear window. And I often have little faces peeking through when I'm trying to get work done, or in a professional Skype call, you'll see little heads running behind there. I'm okay with that, and my clients are okay with that. So I'm not in that corporate world where that might be considered perhaps unprofessional. Most of my clients, it brings a sort of warmth to me and to the work that I do. So I think my children benefit by seeing me work from home and more.
I know. Yeah, I know a lot of people, wonder, is it possible to juggle a high profile career and have children at the same time? Because it is a balancing act. And I remember something fondly, when my, I've also always had a home office, and my son one day came in, and I used to just kind of show him the hand when I'm, not able to talk. And one day he said to me, "Mom, can we talk?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You always show me your hand."
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking you, how do you manage that? Because sometimes we think we're accessible and we may not be as accessible as we think we are to our children, because our minds are occupied. But if you can block off that time and say, well, this is now family time, and when my door is closed, I'm kind of in my office.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I manage that as well as I would like to say on this show. I mean, it's definitely a balancing act, and I think you have to be very conscious of it. No, actually, it's 3 o'clock. My kids are home. Work can wait till 8 o'clock tonight for me. And putting everything away, closing the computer, it has to be a conscious effort. Or when my clients ask me to have a meeting at the time that I need to pick up my kids, to be able to say to the client, and I'm very honest, I'm sorry, I fetch my children at that time. So I'm very proud of being a mother, and I don't ever use them as an excuse not to get work done. Don't get me wrong, but I'm very honest with my clients that, I'm a mom and I'm going to get this work done for you.
Well, I think, that is where authenticity comes to play, because people in the workplace, sometimes we forget they are parents too. And so if we're just, honest about, look, this is what I need to do, my kid's got hockey practice or whatever it is, people can relate to that. They'll relate to that a lot more than when you try and give them some kind of random excuse.
Yeah.
And that is the way to do it. Authenticity will always win. Donna, thank you so much. It was great having you on the show, but I've got a few fun questions for you. Are you a paper or a plastic kind of person?
Paper.
Me too, by the way. I'm really not kind of in the plastic thing. And you may have answered this earlier, but are you a morning or a night kind of person?
That's changing as I get older, I have to admit. If you had asked me pre-50s, I would have said I'm definitely a night person. I do my best thinking at night. I have time at night to write. As I've matured and become older, I think my time clock has shifted, and I'm beginning only this year, I would say, to find myself to be more of a morning person. But I want to go back to that paper plastic question for quick.
Yes.
I have to say that is one of my soapboxes. And I think when we talk about being an empowered woman, I'm a mom, I wear these 3 hats. I think my 4th hat is around really speaking about environmental issues. And, we do the plastic bottles, we shove the plastic inside, the eco bricks I drop them at 2 different places. We recycle as much as we can. We always bring our bags to the market. And I think I tell my children, when I become if I became president, or if I won 20 million rand, I would invest all of that into changing policies around recycling and plastic. I just want to say that.
Wonderful. What is the top thing on your bucket list right now?
Besides sleep.
Besides sleep.
Besides sleep. There's a lot on my bucket list. I think one of them is, as soon as my kids are old enough, I would love to go and see the gorillas in Uganda or Rwanda. That is definitely on my bucket list. Yeah.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. I haven't seen any in real life, so I think that's a great thing. Donna, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. How can people connect with you?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I have a website. It's otherwise.co.za. And on there are my contact details and also more information about this book and another book that I have as well. I am also on Twitter at Donna Podems. Although I'm still, learning to tweet, I am active as I can be on Twitter.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who's joined us live today. If you found value in this, please do show some love, give us some likes or hearts, and then also please do share it, because there's lots of other young ladies out there or people in the workplace wanting to climb the corporate ladder that will benefit from these gems that was shared today by Dr. Donna Podems. Thank you, everyone. And so from me in Cape Town, it's goodbye for now.